Worked.
Amazing. It's just
Amazing.
possible. I may finally be getting the hang of this. I don't want to speak too soon, but maybe I will.
Well, you never
We'll
know.
see.
You never know.
You never know. All right. Hi, Caroline. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, great. Good. Right. Well, off we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to what is the 8th installment now, somehow, of Must Read TV, the Skylark Bookshop Virtual Author Series. My name is Alex George, and I'm beginning to sound like a broken record, but I am also the owner of Skylark Bookshop, which is an independent bookstore in downtown Columbia, Missouri. This week is apparently the week of friends and blurbers. Last night's guest, Christina Baker-Klein, had her blurb on the front of my new novel, The Paris Hours, and this evening's guest, Caroline Leavitt, had her blurb on the front of Setting Free the Kites. And I mention this because it's actually a perfect illustration of why Caroline is one of the most beloved individuals in the publishing industry. She is unfailingly generous with her time and her praise, and is always lifting up other writers and celebrating their work and their success. When the pandemic hit, she co-founded A Mighty Blaze, which we will talk about later. And this has provided a much needed platform for authors who would otherwise be touring with their new publications, but of course are unable to do so. And so it's much harder for them to get the word out about their books. If you haven't checked it out, you absolutely should. It's a wonderful way of finding out about all the new titles that are being published. All of which is to say that if ever there was a living personification of a literary citizen, then Caroline Leavitt is that personification. She also writes amazing novels, 11 of them so far. She is a New York Times and USA Today bestseller and the recipient of multiple accolades and awards. She also writes essays and articles and book reviews, and has been published, as far as I can see, in just about every newspaper and magazine in America. Now, although Caroline and I have known each other for many years now, such is the way of modern life, is that we actually only met for the first time in 2017 when she came to the Unbound Book Festival. And there we actually shared a stage together and talked about our last books. But I'm proud to say that we've become very good friends. And I'm so thrilled to welcome her to Skylark this evening. So Caroline, welcome. It's wonderful to have you here. Now, if you enjoyed this evening's conversation, please consider buying this beautiful book, With or Without You, from Skylark Bookshop. Many of you who are watching tonight will probably already know about the Skyku that we have, and Caroline has written the Skyku. She's signed them and numbered them, and they're winging their way back to us as we speak. So if you buy one of these, they're a limited number, but if you get in early, you will get one of those. But breaking news, we had various conversations today about swag. And I actually lost track of exactly what it is we're doing. But Caroline, do you want to, what's your plan? You've got this amazingly generous thing you're going to do.
Okay. Well, no, it's not amazingly generous. It's actually to support Skylark Books, because independent bookstores are so important right now. They're the soul of the community. And I just wanted to give back. So I have incentives. So if you buy my book, you can also get a watercolor done by me with your choice of a cat, a dog, a coffee cup, or all three, or actually anything you want. You can make it up. I will do it. It will be funny. It'll be like 6 by 8 and you can frame it if you want. If you buy both my books, With or Without You and the paperback of Pictures of You, I will give you a 5-page consult on 5 pages of your writing. It can be the first 5 pages of a novel, it can be your short story, whatever you want, we'll work it out. I do this professionally. And the big deal is if you buy any 4 books from Skylark, one of them has to be With or Without You. I will take the With or Without You copy that you buy and I will annotate it for you with all kinds of secret things, like why I put one scene in and took out another, or why I named this character this and not something else. And I'll put little drawings in it too. So this is just my way of saying thank you for supporting indie bookstores, and thank you for supporting me.
Incredible. So there you are. Those are the, we'll try and recap. If we remember, we don't get too carried away. We'll remind everybody at the end of the various
Yeah,
things.
I actually wrote it down on this post-it so I can remember.
Probably smart. So anyway, usual routine. If you would like to buy a copy, then email us at mail@skylarkbookshop.com or give us a call at 573-777-6990. It's all on a first come first served basis as far as the Sky Crew are concerned, and so that's how we'd like you to do that, and we'll give you a call back and get that taken care of for you. If you've got any questions for Caroline, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen to do that. If you're watching on Facebook, because we're streaming there too, then just write your question in the comments, and by the magic of technology, they will get back to me, I hope, and then we will try and answer those questions as well. Okay, that business done with. Let's talk about this wonderful, wonderful book. Could you begin perhaps just by giving the folks at home just a brief synopsis of what this book is about?
Yep. Okay, well, the novels are actually about two things. On the top, there's different levels. The first level is about a couple in midlife. They've been together 20 years. He was famous as a rock and roller when he was young. Now he's 42, and that fame's starting to fade a little. His long-term partner, Stella, is a very practical nurse, and she's at the stage in life where she wants him to grow up a little. She wants to settle down, and they're arguing. And in the middle of their arguing, they're also drinking quite a bit, and they take some drugs. And in the morning, Simon wakes up, and Stella's in a coma. And when she wakes up, she has, which actually can happen, she has a radically different personality, and she has a startling new talent that gives her the fame that Simon yearns for. So that's the top level of the story. The bottom level of the story is that I myself was actually in a medically induced coma for 3.5 weeks a million years ago when I had my son. And I was given memory blockers, which means that I don't remember anything about the coma. I just remember waking up, but my body remembers. And things would happen where I'd be walking down the street and I'd see a woman in a striped blouse, and I'd have a panic attack because stripes, of course, are the hospital curtains. Or I'd smell a lotion and I'd start to have a panic attack. So I went to a therapist to find out what to do about this. And she said, you know, it's like hypnosis. If I told you that you were burning up, your skin would start to flare and grow red. She said, just write about it and write about somebody different than you. So I wrote about Stella, who, unlike me, remembers everything about the coma. And unlike me, she had a personality change. And unlike me, she had this great new talent. And the thing was, writing about her actually saved me. It really, really saved me. Well, just about all the triggers are gone, except I still don't really like to go to sleep that much, but that's a minor issue. It's a minor issue. So that's the book.
Wow. Wonderful. So would you read just a little bit for us?
I'd love to.
Of your lovely prose?
I would love to. I'm going to read Joe. This is actually my favorite part, partly because this was one of the chapters that my editor wanted me to take out, and I insisted, no, it has to be here. It has to be here. And we went back and forth about it, and he finally said, okay, it's your book. And the interesting thing is, on all the reviews, this is the part they like the best. so I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it.
That multiple times.
Okay, here we go. Chapter 3, Stella's in a coma. Stella floats. She doesn't have a body, though she knows it's there, apart from her on this bed. She can hear Simon talking to her, although she can't make out the words. The rise and fall of his voice confuses her. It's rich and almost gravelly, the way it had been when he was in his 20s, when she had first met him and he was still smoking. Allergic to smoke, she had sneezed at his kisses, but he stopped for her. Simon now says something to her, more urgent, but she still can't make out a syllable. It sounds like grrr, or maybe like zzz. Even though she can't understand him, his voice soothes her. It's real and known and familiar. Simon, my Simon. She wants to tell him how sorry she is that they argued. She doesn't think he meant it. about their dreams being different. It was the storm outside. It was her cold plugging up her sinuses. But how funny, she doesn't have her cold anymore. Here in this place, she isn't aware of her body and its functions. Breathing, sweating, peeing, they all seem part of another life to her. Something she used to do, but she doesn't need to do any longer. Wave bye-bye, body, sayonara. The thought of it makes her laugh, which makes her glad. She still has her sense of humor. Mostly what she does is smell things, something sharp like lemon. Wait, she wants to say, please wait. But the scent fades and vanishes before she can really lock onto it. She hears sounds and she perks with interest. Feet pat on the floor. Voices dip and rise and grow silent. She feels an elbow bumping something hard, but she knows it isn't her elbow. So how could she feel it? I'm here, she wants to say to Simon. I'm right here. She feels so sorry for him when she hears him crying. She can feel where he is by the heat in the room moving closer to her, warming her. She can hear it too, little skips in his voice, the loss of control. He's a color, a soft gray blue. She knows there's a scientific name for that there are people who can hear colors, who can see sounds. She wants to stroke his hair and tell him it's going to be okay. He's crying harder. Don't worry, baby, she thinks. So she's never once called him baby in her other life. Don't worry.
Great. So the obvious question is, why did your editor want you to take that out?
He said he likes things very, very streamlined. He likes the narrative line to just be roaring through. And he's right about that. And we did a lot of work on that. But I also like those sidelines where you go inside someone's head, and I think his objection to that was he felt that there wasn't enough action in it. And I convinced him that yes, there's a lot of internal action going on. And I kept it. I got to keep it. So that was very good.
That's great. So you mentioned about talking to a therapist and about writing this book. And, you know, I've said many times that novelists are like magpies, and that we fly around looking for bright, shiny things.
Yep.
And we think, oh, I'll put that in a book one day. And originally I was thinking, well, why did you wait 20 years to write about being in a coma? And then I realized that actually you didn't.
I didn't.
There was another book coming back.
There was, yeah. I wrote Coming Back to Me a year after the coma. And I wrote the book, and it was about a woman much like me who goes into a coma after the birth of her kid. And at the end of the book, she doesn't know if she's going to be any better. She's still sort of sick. It was kind of a dark book. And it did fine, but it didn't help me physically. And, you know, I kept having these triggers and triggers and triggers. And 5 years ago, my husband had to go to Norway he's a journalist. And the whole week he was gone, I couldn't sleep. I put on movies at midnight, and I watched every stupid movie there was until 7 o'clock in the morning because I was afraid to go to sleep. So when he got back after a week, I was a mess, and I thought, I have to figure this out. I just have to figure this out. So I went to a different therapist who listened to the whole story and said, Caroline, you wrote the wrong book. You know, you wrote your first coma book was like you. You need to write, you can't progress from that. You have to write about somebody who's totally different from you. So that is when I started thinking, oh, I can write somebody remembering a coma and feel like those are my memories. And I started writing it, and I felt better. I just really felt better.
So that's so interesting. So you needed to, in terms of the story that you were telling, create distance between your experience. That seems so counterintuitive to me, because you would imagine
it is counterintuitive. When I started writing the book, my agent said, "You're writing another coma novel? Do you think that's smart?" And I said, "I have to write this book. I really have to write this book." And you know, she ended up saying, "Okay, this is good. This is fine." But you know, a lot of people said that, like, "Don't you want to do something different?" And I felt like, look, for the way I do a lot of stuff is I become obsessed by things, and I have to keep looking at them and turning them around and looking at them until I figured out how I really feel about it, and then I can let it go. And I can assure you and everyone that I will never write another Coma novel again, because this one did, this one really made me feel a lot better, so I didn't have to deal with it anymore.
That's so interesting, because I mean, I sometimes talk about writing as you know, as a form of therapy, but I sort of mean it in a sort of slightly metaphorical sense.
Yeah, I don't really think it's therapy so much in terms of, for me, it's just looking at it. It's like telling the story enough times so that I feel I can't possibly tell this story again. My head will explode. And I just sort of wanted to explore that. And as I did, I started exploring other things, you know, relationships and fame, and just how we live our lives in midlife.
So one of the scenes that I loved in this book is when Stella sits down and eats a burger.
That was so much fun to write. Yeah.
Quite hungry. Well, living in a, I eat meat, but I live in a house full of vegetarians, and my stomach was rumbling as I was reading it, and Simon and Libby, the other two characters who we'll talk about in a moment, sort of look on in sort of appalled silence, which I kind of loved as well, and I don't know, I got the sense that Stella, watching her eat that burger, was like a truer version of herself.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's right, or was it just a different version? What do you
I
think?
think it was I think well, you know, the thing is that I did a lot of research on Coma, and I talked to this guy at the University of Cincinnati. And the thing is that in Coma, your brain is rewiring and refiring. So it's not as if it's a true version of her that she's always had. It's sort of who she is now. I mean, in the book, she starts out as a vegetarian who's very careful about food and health. And that's why it's so appalling to them that she's eating this Burger King greasy burger and loving it and craving it. It's just showing her difference. She's different now, even in her tastes.
Okay. So it's like that old thing about a river. It's like it never moves, but it's always different. So that's okay. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, so I was going to ask whether you think we all have different versions of ourselves within us.
I do.
Right. But we don't all
I
have a coma to go into a coma.
I don't think you have to go in a coma to find a different version of yourself, but I think it takes a whole lot of work. I mean, I grew up in a really dysfunctional, sort of abusive family, and I was very, very shy and really, really angry until my 20s, when I decided I don't want to be like this anymore. I just really don't want to be like this anymore. And I went into cognitive therapy, and I worked really, really hard acting as if I wasn't angry until it felt okay. It felt okay to be a happy person. And then I could let go of the anger, and acting as if I wasn't shy. I mean, I had those red cowboy boots I used to wear. I bought those as a talisman because I figured I figured the kind of woman who would wear those boots isn't afraid of anything. So I'm going to put on those boots, and I'm not going to be afraid of anything. And when I put them on, I felt like a woman who wasn't afraid of anything. So I think who I am now is nothing like who I was, 20 years ago. And it took a whole lot of work and a whole lot of persistence on my part, but I definitely feel different. And I feel like, yeah, my brain cells charged and refired or whatever, but I definitely feel like I'm a different person. And I don't mean this in a woo-woo sense. I mean this in a science-based sense.
Right. Very interesting. So there's a trope that people sometimes sort of talk about when they consider the difference between a photograph and a painting, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute, that a portrait can reveal truths about the subject in a way that a photograph never can. But you in this book go one step further even than that. So Stella, when she wakes up, she starts by drawing lots and lots of circles, and then it progresses, and it transpires that she has developed out of nowhere this extraordinary artistic ability. But it's much more than just an ability to draw people.
Mm-hmm.
She is able to, in these portraits, to see sort of into them and to discover secrets when people sit for her that people have never shared with anybody. And I love this idea so much that it was sort of, it was almost like it's a supernatural element. And
Right.
I was just wondering if you could talk about where that idea came from, because I love it so much. It was,
Yeah, it sort of came out of, I really don't know where it came out of. I knew she was going to paint, and I knew she was going to paint these exquisite paintings, but I thought that's not enough for her to just be a talent where people are looking at her saying, this is cool, I'm having a great time. There had to be sort of a back and forth between her and people looking at the paintings. And I thought, well, maybe like when they look at the paintings, they recognize things in the paintings about themselves that they didn't know. And maybe she recognizes it too on some level, that it's a kind of deeper intuition that she puts in the painting and it reaches people. And that way it became much more of a symbiotic relationship between the subject and the painter. And as soon as I figured that out, I thought, wow, that's really going to work for this. And that's a really interesting idea, because a lot of times with any kind of art, you can be hearing a song and you feel this feeling in your gut, like, oh, they're addressing something in me that's deeply personal. And how did they know that? And that happens too when you're reading books. A lot of times you read things and you think, oh my God, this is just how I feel. How did they know?
yeah, they're writing to me. This is
They're
for me.
writing to me. This is to me. And I wanted that to be the difference between her kind of success and Simon's success when he was just on a stage, being a rock and roll star. And just sort of taking the adulation. And he was giving back music, but it wasn't as personal a connection as what Stella does.
I love that. And I love the idea of this symbiosis between the creator of the art and the receiver of the art. I mean, I always talk about that, in terms of readers, every reader. I mean, I always make this, what I think is a slightly questionable and maybe distasteful analogy, was saying a book is a bit like a kiss in that it requires two people to do it properly.
Yes, but that's right.
and until somebody picks the book up and reads it, they're just words on a page. But the minute that somebody else is ingesting them, then suddenly, bam, the magic happens.
Right, that's right.
And it's a not transactional, but there is this symbiotic relationship between the two. But you really, I mean, you took it to a whole other level, which I just adored. I thought it was so interesting. Okay, so I want to talk about, you mentioned Simon, the bass player with his band.
Mm-hmm.
And the band has definitely seen, I think it's fair to say, better days. They had one big hit, right? And they're sort of, but he's still dreaming about going back and hitting the big time. And a while ago, you did an interview with Eric Danielson at the Columbia Daily Tribune here in town. And you talked a little bit, I think, about redefining success for yourself.
Right.
And
right.
he drew what I thought was a very smart line between your journey and the fork in the road where Simon finds himself in this story. And that was very interesting to me. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I
how you redefined it.
Yeah, I got famous when I was in my early 20s. I had published a short story and it won a prize, and all of a sudden all these agents wanted it, and it became a novel, and I was feted, and I was young, and I thought, this is really fun. This is going to happen every year. And of course it did not. My second year out, I had another novel and it did okay. Publisher went out of business. I got another 3-book deal with a big publisher, and they didn't really pay much attention to the book. And the book didn't, all 3 books, none of them really sold. They got a few reviews, which were good, but it wasn't enough for anyone to know who I was. So I got another big deal with a big publisher, and it was the same thing was sort of happening. And I was thinking, what's going on? Like, why why am I sort of in the sidelines? I want that rush that I had at the beginning. That was like an addiction. So I was writing Pictures of You, and it was the third book, and it's another series for a major publisher. And the editor of this major publisher called me up and said, Caroline, we're not going to publish this. We just don't think it's special. And I said, excuse me, can I rewrite it so it is special? And they said, no, we don't think you have the ability. I said, well, would you look at another book of mine? And this editor said, no, but best of luck in the future. So I hung up the phone and I thought, okay, I went from extreme success in my early 20s, and right now I'm at extreme failure, because nobody's going to want to buy a ninth novel from somebody where none of the books have sold. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody wanted to know who I was as a writer. And I thought, well, this is it. What am I going to do? And I thought, well, I'll just keep writing and I won't be a writer. And I was having a real problem with that. And one of my friends said, look, I have an editor at Algonquin. Let me talk to her about your book. And I said, well, that's really kind of you. So she did that. And the editor, Andra Miller, who I owe everything to, called me up, and after about 10 minutes I realized she's pitching me Algonquin, and I had to stop her because I'm an honest person, and I said, Andra, I have to tell you, I'm thrilled that you're pitching me Algonquin, but I don't sell books. I don't sell books. Nobody knows who I am. I've had maybe 3 reviews out of 11 books. And she laughed and she said, oh, honey, that's all going to change. You will now. So they bought the book, and I thought, this is really strange. And I didn't expect anything. I just thought, you know, it's going to be the same deal. Book comes out, no reviews, no sales, back to square one. They got that little book into 6 printings months before it came out. It was on the New York Times bestseller list its second week out. It was a Costco's pennies pick, which means it goes to every person who has ever shopped at Costco. And all of a sudden my phone was ringing off the hook, and I was getting all these things and all these reviews, and people were treating me differently. And I was actually very glad that it happened then, because I could look at it and think, you know what, this is no more real than when I was 21 years old or whatever, and I had that first success. It's timing, it's luck, it's having a great, brilliant publisher who knew how to market the book. And it made me feel actually better, because I felt as if I had gone to rehab, where the addiction for the fame was sort of gone. And now I just sort of feel like I just want to be able to write. I want to be able to sell my books so I can afford to write another book. And if people love it, great. If they don't love it, that's fine, as long as they're reading something. I think a writing career is often like this, at least mine is anyway. And I just had a different feeling about it. And I have to say that coupled with that was that I did a lot of research on musicians. My husband is a music journalist, and he knows a lot of famous musicians. And he introduced me to a lot of them, and I found that there were 2 types. There were the types who were in their 50s, and they had been wildly famous in their 20s, and they were still acting like they were 20. I mean, they were carrying around vodka bottles and tight pants and coming on to all the 17-year-old girls. And I would look at them and think, what the hell is that? And then there were the guys who I really loved, who were in their 50s, who had been famous at one time, and now they weren't, but they were still able to play their music, and they were so happy because they just felt like, I'm playing music, whoever comes, great, I'll give you a great show, I get to write music, I get to do all this stuff. And that was the kind of success that I liked. Success to me is being able to do what you want to do and be happy doing it, rather than all the other stuff, which is like smoke and mirrors.
That's so true, and finding joy in the work.
Yeah,
Is
the journey.
so important. I remember once giving advice. I was teaching a course, and somebody afterwards came up and said, "Well, I've written this thing," and I'd read it and said, "Oh, but I've got this other idea." And he said, "Which do you think would be most likely to be published?"
Oh. Ah.
That's the wrong question to
Oh,
ask.
wrong question.
You've got to write whatever you have to write and then
Right,
worry about that later.
right,
But you've got to, if you don't find joy in the act of sitting down and creating everything, I mean, it might be awful and stressful and other things as well, but
but
if
it's deep down joy
deep down
still.
to it, in creating that stuff, making these stories up, if you don't have that, then you should probably be doing something else if all you're worried
Right.
about is publication. And I realize that's easy for us to say because we are, but if you don't, then nothing else really matters. And I think that is a good, profound
Oh, I
lesson in
agree.
every, not just for writers, but for
For
everybody.
everybody, I always tell my writing students that, because a lot of them will say, I'm going to write the next girl on the train. And I tell them, no, you're not in this class. I tell them, you're going to write the thing that comes from you personally, and that's how it becomes universal.
Right,
And I have told my son since he was 3 years old, we don't care what you do as long as you love it.
right,
Like
yeah,
that's it. You just have to love it, and then that's how you'll be happy and fulfilled.
right, absolutely. So Simon has what felt like a moment of real insight towards the end of the book, when everyone's world has been turned upside down by everything that has happened. And he thinks, and I've got this down here, I'm not sure if I copied it out exactly, but maybe everything changes. And that was the way it was supposed to be. Um, and that, which kind of sort of goes back to what we were saying before about change and always being.
Right.
Do you think that's true, or was that just something that Simon needed to tell himself to rationalize everything that had happened?
I think it's sort of true. I think that everything, well, I think it's true in the sense of I don't I don't think that things stay the same. You never know. I mean, you can see like in the course of a day, like your moods will change a million times, and that gives you different decisions that you can make that can change a million times also. I think that everything is always changing, including people. And I think the danger is when you don't change. When you
Uh,
don't change, that's when it gets, I think that's the secret to a long relationship. If you're not changing and your partner's changing, that's not good. If you're both not changing, that's even worse. So, and of course, if you're both changing in different directions, that's not good either. But I think it's like, nothing stays still. Everything's moving in a kind of science.
so everything's moving in this book, and we've spoken about Stella, we've spoken about Simon, but there is a third person
Yes.
in this story, and that's Libby,
Right.
who is a doctor at the hospital where Stella is staying while she's in her coma. And she's a really interesting character, and one who starts off quite small, but
Mm-hmm.
she grows and grows and grows. And at some point in the book, you suddenly go, oh, okay, this isn't just a bit part player. This is somebody who's going to become quite much, much more important.
Right.
And which in and of itself was super interesting, because the other two just are in there at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
having an enormous argument, and so you introduce this character in a completely different way. But one of the things that I found so interesting about her, because she comes across, I mean, she's a doctor, so she comes across as being very proficient and efficient, and
Mm-hmm.
but we learn that she had a brother, an older
Right.
brother who died when he was young.
Mm-hmm.
And while he was alive, he eclipsed her. Well, he
Right.
felt that he eclipsed her in every
Right.
conceivable way, and she almost felt invisible to her parents. And and only after he died, or perhaps because of the fact that because he died, that was why she decided to go to medical school and to
Right.
become almost like standing in her brother's shoes,
Right.
which was so not what I was expecting. And it completely reorientated my sense of who this person was. Um, and somebody who was apparently so at ease with her own agency actually wasn't, and her whole life had actually been dictated by this tragedy that had happened early on, which was entirely beyond her control. And so I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
why you chose to do that. Because it was so interesting.
Well, because I think that I'm really, really interested in, what happens when you're a child and the misconceptions and the misbeliefs you have that stick with you for your whole life, even if they're not true. And, I spoke to a lot of women doctors, and they have a lot of pressure to be better than anybody. And I liked the idea of, I knew she had to have like something going on under the surface. And I sort of knew it was going to be her brother's death and she was going to feel responsible. But then I thought, well, what's the misconception she's going to have about that? And I thought, oh, maybe it's that she feels if I live my brother's life for him, his life won't be for naught because there'll be a good doctor in the world. And also then my parents will love me. And concurrently, when you believe that, she also believed that it was terrifying to love anybody because then she felt, well, any moment the faucet's going to shut off. And like it did with my parents, and I won't get anything. So her whole thing was, I'm going to be a great doctor. And she needed to have that disrupted. And she also needed to go back to the source and find out what really happened when she was a child, which turns out to be something very different than what she thought. And it made her realize that she was living her life in a way that she didn't have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love and I love the way that she sort of crept up on and sort of, you talk about disruption, and there's sort of everyone's life disrupted all the way through this. That would have been a good subtitle for this book. Disruption. So you've created this trio of brilliantly realized and fully they come off the page. They're so full of life, and they have these wonderful qualities, but they're also deeply flawed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you have to have heard readers say, well, when they say why they don't like a book, you sometimes hear,
right, it's the characters unlikable.
they weren't likable, which has always been a complete, and editors have said that to me as well in the past.
Right.
And it's always been a bit of a head scratcher because, I think that the less sympathetic characters are often the most interesting.
That's interesting. And also, I think that, when I was first writing the Simon pages, I was sending it to writer friends and they were saying, no, he's kind of a jerk, isn't he? And I'd say, no. He's like making bad choices right now. But when you understand why someone is doing something, and when you get to the soft, tender heart of him, I said, I guarantee you will love him. He's not a jerk. You're just seeing him acting out. And I had to ask readers to give him a chance to see why he is the way he is. And I mean, and there's hints of it even on. I mean, he could have easily left when she went in coma and joined the band, and he didn't. He stayed.
Really? I mean, that's the redeeming.
He stayed. Yeah, that's like the save the cat moment. The building's burning and the mass murderer goes in and saves a kitten. So you say, oh, he has good qualities. But I think the most interesting thing is, like, we all do bad things, maybe things we're not proud of. But what matters is what we do when we realize we did that. And the reason why we did that, what the wound was that pushed us to be that way. And that's what I did. I mean, I wanted him to be complicated.
So the trick to writing flawed characters is just to bear all that and lay it all out and to help the reader understand and empathize. Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I also want to talk or ask you about the role of chance, I guess, in this book. I mean, this felt like a very smart commentary about relationships, and particularly about how fragile they are, and how carelessly we exist within them. And there are, for want of a better word, there are accidents that happen at various points in this book. So at the very beginning, we've talked about this fight that Simon and Stella have at the very start of the book, and you get the impression, or at least I as a reader got the impression, I mean, you're sort of shaking your head going, oh, this doesn't look good at all. They are, as you said, they're at totally different levels. Stella wants one
Yeah,
thing, Simon wants
that's
something else.
another.
They're snippy, there's nothing
It's
good.
snowing. Yeah, nothing's good. It's snowing. It's
Yeah,
snowing. There might not be a plane. She doesn't feel well. It's like one of those arguments that couples have over and over again, and it's just sort of, and it's at the point where both of them are sort of thinking, "Fine, go to California, leave me alone," and he's thinking, "Fine, I'll go to California, and there'll be all these nice tan girls there." And,
right. So, and then you have the incident with the drugs and the coma, and so that's
Mhm.
just that's life, or whatever you want to call it, the fates getting in the way. There's that whole thing about, what is it, men plan and God
God
laughs.
laughs.
One
Yeah.
of those sorts of things. So there's that, but then there's also, for example, and I'm going to have to sort of talk around this because I don't want to give anything away, but Simon discovers that something that Libby has done, or
Right.
not,
Right.
that's entirely by chance. And then towards the end of the book, Stella happens to be walking, watch me circumlocute here, happens to be walking through a park in the East
Right.
Village and sees something, again, quite by chance.
Right.
And so all of these things happen. And I just remember reading it and going, and so getting a little bit scared almost, because none of these people are wrong, but they're like this, I don't know, sorry Shakespeare, but the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think those things, happen in real life, and I think they happen all the time. And it's sort of, a lot of times terrible things happen just when things are good. Like when Stella sees that thing in the park that totally disrupts her life, she's going home and she's feeling sort of happy. She's not thinking, and then wham, everything is different. And usually we think that that just happens when somebody dies or something really traumatic happens. But this was like something there. And the thing with Libby was she did a betrayal. I mean, she did something that was not great. And it's almost unforgivable. And I had a really hard time writing that because I kept thinking, how are people not going to hate her? And I tried to fix that by making she herself think, what did I do? How can I figure this out?
But in your answer to the earlier question, I mean, you explained it. She's not
Right.
an evil person, but she just had her motivations. They might not have been the most
Right.
upstanding or honorable, but there was a reason. And so we as
There's a
readers
reason. Right.
buy into that and empathize. So yeah, it worked. I mean, I mean, do you think that all relationships are just hanging by a thread, just waiting?
I don't know. I mean, I've been in the same relationship now for 30 years, but I will say that in my 20s, I must have had hundreds of relationships where I thought this was the one, and then it just like smashed up. I had a horrific first marriage that never should have happened. And I think relationships are complicated. I think they're really complicated and they're really hard. And I think, if you're a creative person at all, your mind is always moving around saying, why did that person say that? And why isn't this way? And it's like anything in life. It's just changes all the time and anything can happen. I mean, the thing that always scares me the most is that how suddenly a relationship can break apart. I had these two friends who were married 17 years and fairy tale marriage. Just they talked about everything. They were always holding hands. They were loving. They were great. And then one day, the guy came home and he excused himself and went in the basement and he shaved his head and he shaved all the hair off his body. And he came back up and he said, I want to do bodybuilding. And she said, okay. And he got obsessed with it, and so obsessed that I have a photograph of him pulling a Mack truck by a rope with his teeth. And he just got different, and his interest got different. and she couldn't join in them with him because she wasn't really interested in that. They started to pull apart, and the relationship was over like within a few months. And that always freaked me out because I still can't figure out, well, what happened? Why did he suddenly decide to be somebody else? And why did he decide that she couldn't go along for the ride? Like, how does that happen?
It's messy, isn't it? And
Yeah,
that's what's so interesting about this book. And we're watching these three people who we, really feel a connection with, and they're just trying to work it out. They're
yeah.
just trying to, some of the wounds are self-inflicted for sure, but it's just like they're just trying to work it out, and that's the drama, and that's why we keep telling the stories.
Right, right.
So I wanted to ask you, so the book ends, I mean, at least for me, on a sort of hopeful note, out of the ashes of these complicated, messy.
Right. Well, it's different. It's different. It's a happier note, but
Yeah, right. But we can at least envisage a future
right, right.
each of them. But I really liked how you left things unresolved.
Oh, I
Uh,
always do.
okay. Well, I was going to ask whether you want readers to supply their own endings or work it out
Yeah, I
themselves.
definitely do. I like the never-ending story. I want them to finish it and close the book and say, "Oh my God, is Stella going to do A or is she going to do B? And what's the deal with Libby? What is?" And then I want them to imagine them into the future. And the truth is, I don't really know what they are going to do. I assume that they're okay and out in their world wherever they are, but I don't like things that are all neatly tied up, because to me that's when everything falls apart.
Right. I mean, I agree with you. And in the Paris hours, I left things very unresolved to the point where people were quite cross about it. But life doesn't come with a little bow on
No,
top. And I'm the
no.
same. And I love that you did that. So also towards the end of the book, we meet another character called Nick, who is a young.
Oh, right. I forgot about him. That's right.
This is your book.
That's right. Nick. Oh yeah, he's a type.
And I want to talk about this because this really brings us back to what we were talking
Right,
about before. So when Stella first meets him, he's very insecure and he's wondering if his writing is any good, and he refuses to show it to her.
right.
And then he gets a nice deal with an extremely large advance.
I know. Yeah, it happens all the time.
And I was just going, wow, am I not paying attention? What's going on? Anyway, but only then is he willing to show Stella his
Right,
work. He says, because now I know it's good.
right,
So, and this does kind of come back to the conversation about work and finding joy, because
right,
it's really jumped out at me that this young writer needed the external validation of a publishing deal before
right,
he felt that he was really
right.
a writer. And this kind of captured a contradiction in the writing life for me, because my first reaction was, well, when he gets older, he will realize that it's kind of what we were saying, that getting
Right.
published isn't the be all and end all of it.
No, it isn't. It's
And
not
he's
what you
really
think it
enjoying
is.
Right. But then I sort of thought, hang on a minute. I've published 7 books. You've published 11 books. And I know, because I see what you write. We are both slammed with self-doubt.
Oh yeah, constantly.
Uh,
Constantly, every minute, every minute.
it comes with the territory completely.
Yeah,
Assailed by doubt about what we're doing and is it any good and who's gonna want to read it and all of these
right.
things. um and I was wondering whether I'm not sure there's a question at the end of all this, but I recognized it so much and felt all of these feelings about it. And can you sort of give reassurance to anyone who's listening or
Oh
watching?
yeah, I can.
How much does it matter about other people thinking about it?
It's very hard. It's really, really hard. But I tell I tell my writing students, if you're having a day where you feel like everything you're doing is terrible and you don't want to show anybody, that's usually good, because you have to learn to love that, because that means that's your subconscious working. If you are going to, you have to think of it as a kind of addiction. You cannot be addicted to other people's approval. There was a story that Anne Lamott told last night about, I forget the name of the composer. It was some composer who was winning an Oscar for his musical score, and he's standing up there in front of millions of people. Millions of people are watching. They give him this award. He feels great, and he told Anne Lamott later the next day. He said, "You know what? The happiness lasted 24 hours, and now the self-doubt is back." So it's sort of, you have to realize it's always going to be that way. It's just, oh, there's also this great John Irving quote, which I love, where he says, if you don't feel that you're on the edge of humiliating yourself, you're not writing properly. It's part of the nature of the game. It's kind of, but what you have to tell yourself is that the only thing that really matters is what you feel about it. You know, it's like you're going to get, there's a whole lot about publishing that's unpleasant, in terms of, like, you might get, in the space of 1 hour on one day, I got the best review I ever got, a front page rave in the Washington Post, and 10 minutes later I got the worst review I ever got, a front page pan from, I think it was a Philadelphia Inquirer, and they, like, the point by point, the paper that loved the one thing, the other paper hated it. And I remember staring at it saying, how can this be? I didn't know how to feel. Like, and my husband said, what do you mean you don't know how to feel? Like, you're going to base what you feel on what this person says or what that person says? And I thought, yeah, I am. But you just have to realize that it's not really true. It's not really true. Everybody has self-doubt. And that's why we're writers. We're trying to get lost in these other worlds. I mean, how do you handle it? How do you handle it?
Well, I tend not to read any reviews, and I certainly never go near any online stuff.
Oh yeah, no, that'll kill you.
Yeah, although I've seen people who do, and they fume about this 1-star review, and it's sort of, you know, it's just that way lies madness, and it's like, yeah, so I just do my best to not not think about it too much. And just, yeah, but going on doing the work. And I always think that, you know, occasionally you see writers who think what they have written is the absolute bee's knees.
I don't know that many writers who feel that.
No, I don't either, but when I do,
No,
oh
yeah,
dear, because that is not a place from which you want to be telling
right, right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, most of the writers I know were all basket cases all the time. And it's sort of like, no matter what happens, it's sort of, you know, I've had people say to me, like, aren't you happy about this review or that thing that just happened? And I think, yeah, for now. And I've also had people say, would you be happy if you won the Pulitzer? And I think, well, maybe, but I would think, well, they just gave it to me because they felt sorry for me. Or something like it's always, you know, that's what writing is like. So any of you out there, if you have these feelings, it's totally normal, and you can always talk to me about them, and I will tell you that it's totally normal.
The thing is that you might win a Pulitzer or you might win the Booker Prize or whatever, but you still got to get up the next
You
morning,
just get up and do it.
tell the
Yeah,
next. So, and it doesn't help you there. You know,
it doesn't help you. It does not help you at all. It really doesn't. It's always something new. In fact, I remember I emailed Elizabeth Strout the day before she won the Pulitzer, and she must have known she was going to win it, though nobody else knew it. And we were talking about how hard writing is and how sad we feel. And after she won the Pulitzer, I emailed her again and said, you won the Pulitzer. How could you say it was hard? And she said, well, because it is. It's like, now I'm sitting down in a new book, and it's exactly what you said. And it's, you still have to go through the same process, and it doesn't help. It's like you were high yesterday, but now you're not, and you have a hangover.
it doesn't get any easier. You know, whether
No.
you 11 books,
Yeah.
11 books, or 25 books. It's still
Yeah.
the same things apply. Okay, so we've got a question from Julie, who said, please talk about the beautiful cover.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to talk about the cover. I want to show you all something. I hope it comes up. You can see at the top of the fireplace, there is a painting. It is actually the painting of my cover because I found the artist of this cover. Usually Algonquin will send me 5 covers and then we go back and forth and I'm able to like say, I like this, I don't like this. This time, Elizabeth Charlotte, who was the publisher of Algonquin at the time, called me up and said, listen, we've gone through 60 covers. We have the perfect cover. You are going to love this cover. And I said, oh, all right. And she sent me the cover. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh my God, I love this cover. It's perfect. You can see the brush strokes. The way this woman is looking it's perfect. It has like just the right mood, and the typeface is like a brush stroke. And the paint, I mean, I loved it so much that I had the painter make me a small canvas, and I stare at it every day because it is so incredible to me. It just sort of seems to, I don't know what it does, it sort of vibrates almost like the way you want Stella's paintings to vibrate and to tell you something. So that was the story about that beautiful cover. And Julia, I love it too. And by the way, the painter's name is Claire Elsa Esser, and she is on Etsy, and you can get prints from her if you like the cover without the stuff written on it with my name and stuff. And she has other like really beautiful paintings.
It was the decision to have a painting on the cover, because it's quite unusual. I mean, usually, was that because of Stella's painting?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure. I had no ideas they always ask me, what do you think the cover should be? And I never have any idea whatsoever because it covers a marketing decision. And
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
yeah, and I always go, well, I mean, I do the word stuff. You do the visual stuff. I can't.
Yes, yes. Well, you had a very beautiful cover for the Paris Hours. Did you have input on that? That's a
Well, so
gorgeous cover.
it is lovely, and Macmillan have this whole thing they do with covers, because this was the first time I was published by them, and they sent me this long questionnaire about it, and saying,
Really?
and they basically found every cover of every book and every publication, every territory that I'd, and put them all in a sheet and sent them to me. Said, what did you like about this one? What did you like about this one? And
Wow.
it's really quite cool. But basically, I ended up going, I really don't care what you put on the cover. Just please don't put the Eiffel Tower on the cover.
Oh, God.
Um,
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like I know it's a marketing thing, although I will say, when I was writing Coming Back to Me, the cover of the hardback is gorgeous. It's like a Hopper painting. It's a guy sitting in a diner feeding a baby. It's nighttime, nobody's there. It's a beautiful cover. When they came to do the paperback, I said, oh, can we keep the same cover? It's so beautiful. They said, no, we're going to do something different. And they didn't show it to me. And I saw the cover and I freaked out. First of all, it was pink. It was pink. It had a woman's nightgown, and there was no woman in a nightgown in the book, hanging on a peg. And then there was an inset of a guy's photograph, and he looked like a GQ guy smiling with a bouquet of flowers. And I said, how can you do this? This is about this man who's struggling to raise his baby while his wife is in a coma. This is not the right cover. And they said, well, we like it. And I had my agent speak to them. And the only thing they would do is they took the smile off the guy's face. But there was so anybody who wants to see those 2 covers, it's not Algonquin, it's like a previous publisher. Look up the hardback of Coming Back to Me, and then compare it with the paperback, which is the most mortifying cover I've ever had.
I've actually sent 2 covers back.
Oh, you did?
Once in England and once over here. The first cover they did for Setting Free the Kites was just.
What did it look like?
Oh, it was a beach, but it was the wrong kind of beach. It was like a beach in North Carolina rather than the beach in Maine, and it was just all wrong.
Wrong. Okay.
They were wonderful about it. They said, okay, fair enough. And then I said, could we maybe think about this? And So they've always, I mean, publishers, I mean, obviously they want their authors to be happy. And so I've been very lucky anyway in terms of that.
Yeah. What about titles? Did you have trouble with your titles?
I always have trouble with my titles, but I was about to ask you about your title because Christina has asked what inspired the title, and did you?
That's a really funny story. I'm sorry. I'm laughing because for me, titles are always a nightmare. It's always a nightmare. This is my fourth book with Algonquin, I guess, and they've never liked any of my titles. I've given them a list of 60 titles, and Algonquin is so small, so everybody talks about everything. And they've come back and said, no, we don't like that title, and try again. And I've tried again, and I've tried again. My first novel with Algonquin Pictures of You, Andrew Miller named, and I said, great, fine. Is This Tomorrow? I actually named, and they accepted it, and that was fine. Cruel Beautiful World, my son named, because they didn't like any of the titles I gave them. This one, I don't know if my editor named it or my son named it, but I did not. They didn't like any titles I had. And I had literally, like, I sent them 40, no, 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 no. I sent them another 40, no, 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 no. And I finally said to my editor, you know what, if you name it, I will be happy with whatever you name it. You know, like, you tell me. So it's sort of, and it's funny because With or Without You is a YouTube title.
Really?
And I don't like YouTube. I really don't. Somebody interviewed me and they said, oh, I bet you like REM though. And I said, yeah, I really do. And she said, well, there are people who like REM, don't like U2, and people who like U2 generally don't like REM. Who knew?
I think
That's
I
not
like.
true.
I'm not sure. Well, anyway, well, that's fascinating.
So there it is, my U2 title.
So we're right at 8 o'clock, but I've got lots more questions. I want to ask you about A Mighty Blaze because this is
Okay, that's an important thing. Okay, A Mighty Blaze. This goes back to March, right before everything started shutting down. And I got a call from my publicist who said, you know, your big, huge event in March, where I was supposed to speak in front of 1,000 librarians, has been canceled because of the pandemic. And I said, oh no, I had a whole hour-long speech and I had practiced it. I knew the hand motions. And I said, well, maybe I can do the next event. And they said, no, Caroline, you don't understand. We think everything's going to go virtual. So I hung up and I thought, what am I going to do now? You know, like, this book is going to die and everybody else's book is going to die. What am I going to do? So I made a video of myself doing a library speech and I sent it to Algonquin and they said, this is great. We're going to send it to the libraries. And they loved it. And I thought, I bet I can do this and help people. So I just put a brief thing on Facebook saying, hey, writers, have you lost your tours like I have? Are you scared about your book? I said, I'm starting the Nothing is Canceled book tour. And all it is make a video, make it silly, 2 minutes. All you have to do is shout out, you must shout out another writer who has a book out, and you must shout out an indie bookstore because they're suffering. And I thought I was going to get like 10 responses, and I got 200. And I started freaking out saying, how am I going to do this? And word was getting around, and the Washington Post called me up and said, oh, so what's this Nothing is Canceled book tour? And I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. And lucky for me, I got a phone call from Jenna Blum, who said, I'm thinking of doing the same thing you're doing. Do you want to join forces? And I said, absolutely. So we were like 2 women writers in yoga pants. We had no idea what we were doing, no business sense, either one of us. We just put the word out to places that this is what we're doing. We're going to promote writers who have lost tours, and we're going to promote indie bookstores. And we were inundated, absolutely inundated. We partnered with the Authors Guild and Publishers Weekly. All of a sudden we were being called by the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, the New York Times, and interview after interview. And we kept saying, we're not quite sure what we're doing yet. And so we began to hire people. We couldn't pay them, but we have a staff of 20, and they're all specialists. We have one person who live interviews people with mystery books out on Mighty Mysteries on Monday. It's Sarah DeBello. We have Rachel Barenbaum does debuts with her glam cam. We have Mark, who does something called the Thoughtful Bro, which is refreshingly literate literature. Every Friday we have frontliners, which are big names, and we were stunned to get big names. We got John Irving.
I remember writing to you before you were going to interview him.
Yeah, it was sort of, I mean, that's my, I mean, we have people who are accountants and producers and tech people. And I kept thinking, well, what am I going to do? I mean, I co-founded this, but I can't do the technical stuff. I'm terrible with strategy. I can't do financial stuff. And they said, well, you're really good at talking to writers. So why don't you like go out and ask them if they want to come on the Blaze? And I said, oh, all right. And I started writing to writers, and to my surprise, they all wanted to come on. But with John Irving, I had written John Irving like 10 years ago. I tracked him down. I just wanted to tell him how much his work meant to me. And he wrote me back a handwritten letter saying, you know, I read your letter twice and it didn't ask anything. And that really surprised me. He said, and that's why I'm writing back to you. And it was a very lovely letter. And then about 5 years ago or so, I got to him again through his publicist and said, do you think John would consider blurbing my novel? And she said, I don't know, I'll ask him. And she came back and she said, John knows who you are, which made me, and he said, but he's not blurbing now. And I thought, that's okay. I didn't expect it. So when A Mighty Blaze came on, I thought, I'm going to try to get John Irving. So I went to his publicist again. I said, I know this is a really long shot, but John knows who I am. And I reiterated the whole story. And I said, we'd really love to have him. It would mean so much to us. And whatever you need, I will do. If he wants to see all the questions beforehand and vet them, I will do that. I will do anything. He's a hero of mine. She said, okay, I'll talk to John. So there was like 2-week period where I would get emails back saying, well, John wants to know how long are you going to talk to him? And then it would be silence. And it would be, John wants to know, who's going to be doing the interviewing? Is that you? And it went back and forth, and then he said yes. And he was the most charming, amazing. I mean, if you look at the tape, I'm just sitting there like totally astonished, pinching myself, saying I'm speaking to, you know, this hero. And since then we've had Elizabeth Strout, Zigra Nunez, who just won the Orange Prize, I believe, the Women's Prize, whatever they're calling it now, is coming in 2 weeks. We had Jill McCorkle. We're having, Sue Miller is coming tomorrow. And it's been amazing. But the most amazing thing is that we have every Tuesday, we promote writers. And some days there's 50 of them, and some days there's 40, and they get to post little stuff up, and they have a presence. And we've started doing virtual book festivals for people. We have Authors Love Bookstores where authors interview there. Did you do that? Have you done that yet?
I haven't.
You haven't? Oh, then you know what? I will do it with you. I will do it for you. I'm going to write it down right now. Authors Love Bookstore.
When my book came out, I was Christina Baker Klein interviewed me on A Mighty Blaze.
She did. Okay, so you have been on there. I thought you had.
But the bookstore hasn't been on.
The bookstore hasn't been. Okay.
I was talking about the books. No, I was on.
Okay, I will write a note to make that happen. So it's growing. It's huge. We now have an accountant. They're thinking of monetizing, and again, it's all way beyond me. All I want to do is like reach out to writers and, you know, help them, and that part is fine. The rest of the stuff, running a business, it's not my forte. I can't do that.
Well, speaking of someone who's now running a business, I can sort of sympathize.
Oh yeah, but you're doing so you're doing the financial and the publicity and everything. It's a lot.
Payroll. Ooh, fun. Anyway,
yeah.
Before we go, and I warned you that I was going to ask you this question. Can you talk about a book or two that you've read this year that has really knocked your socks off? Just to share.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely really, really loved Sue Miller's Monogamy. And I loved it because it goes on to all the themes that I love, which is how do you really know the people you love? I mean,
Mm.
it's about this woman who's had this long marriage with this guy, and she thinks she knows him, and he dies, and she's heartbroken. And then she discovers he's not who she thought he was, that he had an affair. And Sue Miller goes into both her head and the husband's head, and it's so multi-layered, and the writing is just so gorgeous that um, it's the kind of book that when you read it, you'll know what I mean. It makes you want to sit down and write. You know, it just makes you think like, this is so great. I have to do this too. I mean, I'm sort of looking at my pile. I know you asked me this and I forgot. I know what book also really did me in was You Again by Deborah Emmerich. It's sort of like, it's very much quantum physics and sort of odd. And it's about this woman in her 40s and she thinks she sees her younger self. And
Mm.
she's very sort of confused about this, and it's sort of what happens, and there's all this political stuff going on, but the writing is amazing. And that was another book that made me think, oh, I want to write. I want to sit down and write now, which I haven't done
That's
so far.
that's so interesting. I love that you articulated in that way because there are certain writers who I read and I think, well, I'm just going to not bother anymore because I can't write a single sentence as good as anything this guy or woman can do. But I know what you mean, and there are certain stories and certain books that make you just go, that's right, that's right. This is what it's about.
Right. Or they show you something and you look at it and think, you can do this? Like
Yeah,
you
yes,
can, wow, I didn't know you could do that. Maybe I'll see if I can do that. And it's just
that's
amazing, amazing.
wonderful. Well, Caroline, thank you. This has been an absolute joy, of course. So
Oh,
now,
wait. I see that someone wants to know to run through the extra offers at the end of this talk. If I type it in, will they be able to see it? Or should
um,
I say it out loud or?
loud again.
Okay, I have to get my little
You
post-it.
could-
Okay, so here are the authors. Okay, if you buy my book, you get a watercolor painting. They're like 6 inches, maybe by 7. Um, they're kind of sly. I do characters who are usually saying things about stuff. I can do whatever you would like. Just tell me and I will do it. But I'm particularly good with dogs, cats, and coffee cups. If you buy any 4 books from Skylark Books, and one of them has to be mine, this is the big deal. Then you have to send me my book to me, but I will annotate it for you. I will tell you all these secrets that nobody knows about. You know, this first scene was originally at a beach, not in a blizzard, or whatever. And I will also draw in it, and I'll put post-its in it so you can see where it is on the pages. And if you don't want me to annotate the book on the pages, I will do it on post-its. Okay, if you buy both with or without you, and pictures of you from Skylark Books, I will give you a 3 to 5 page double spaced consult on your writing. I'll edit it. I'll tell you what I think. I'll give you advice. You can, to get all these wonderful deals, you have to buy it through Skylark Books. And Alex will send me the receipt and then he'll give you my address, my email address, and we'll work it out and I'll do it right away for you. And it'll be a great thing. It'll be supporting a fabulous bookstore and a fabulous writer, Alex George. And I will also be so grateful. I will be your best friend forever.
Well, that is incredibly generous of you, and thank you so much, Caroline. And thank you for your. It's always a joy to talk to you, and hopefully we'll be able to get together in real
I
life.
hope so. I hope
And
so.
I hope you'll come
Thank
back
you.
to Unbound,
I
and
would
hopefully
love to. I would
I'll
love
see
to. And
you
I would love
again
to
in
see your
your
bookstore. Thank you so much, Alec.
right.
And thank all of you who were here and for the great questions and for everything else. And I'll see you online. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. And I'm just going to finish by saying, please remember next week, it's next Wednesday, we have a really wonderful event with Michelle Bowdler, author of Is Rape a Crime, and Alison Wood, who's the author of Being Lolita. They're going to be talking to each other. It's going to be an incredible discussion. So please do tune in for that as well. Caroline, thank you. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for watching, and take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.